Now, this is exactly why tutoring is a scam, generally, for most cases. In fact, if you stick to the end of the video, I'll actually tell you the only case when tutoring would be needed. But in every other case, tutoring is not the best option. In fact, it's probably just burning time and money. And so let's just get started. Before I kind of tell you why tutoring is a scam, let me tell you a quick story. So throughout my GCSE, A-level, and university days, I, for the most part, got the top grades. GCSEs and A-levels, I got the top grades. And then even in university, I'm still doing pretty well. And throughout that whole time, I haven't needed a single tutor at any point in my academic career. In fact, actually, let me be a bit more honest. I only had a tutor once, and it was not even up to me. It was because I picked up I picked up A-level computer science a bit late. And my mom was worried that I wouldn't be able to catch up, so she got me a tutor. And literally after the first session, I said, this is not for me. I don't need this. I can just do this on my own. And guess what? I ended up getting an A-star in A-level computer science. So that was the only case when I had a tutor, and I didn't even need it. And so in most cases, tutoring is a scam. And here's exactly why. There's only 4 parts to getting the top grades in any exam, any subject, no matter how difficult, boring. There's only 4 things you really need to take care of. Number 1, understanding the content. Number 2, recalling the content. Number 3, applying the content. And then number 4, managing your time in the exam. Any subject that you do or any exam that you do, your result in the exam will come back to a combination of these 4 things. Now, why is this important? Well, in relation to tutoring, what does tutoring actually do? Does it help you recall the content? Not really. Does it help you apply the content? Maybe in some cases. Does it help you manage your time? Not really. The point of tutoring is for you to understand the content. Basically, the point of tutoring is just to do what school already does. School is there for you to have teachers that teach you the content. If you have any questions, you ask them. They fill in the gaps, that type of thing. And so if you kind of just do the math on this, it's only 25% of the process of actually getting the top grades. In fact, I'd argue it's not even 25%. I've seen cases in my experience and also other people's experiences where you could just brute force an exam. You could just do as many practice questions as possible, not really understand the content, but because you've done so many practice questions, you know exactly how to answer them. And so I would actually argue that understanding the content is not that important. What's more important is recalling the content, applying the content, and managing your time. And yet, when students are struggling and when parents see their students struggle, their children struggle and all that stuff, the first go-to move is to find a tutor. When in reality, you're not struggling because you don't understand the content. In fact, that's already the point of school. Like, if you can't understand the content because of school, you probably A, have a bad teacher, or you just can't pay attention. And so what's the point of just doing more of that? There's no point really. And so ultimately, when someone struggles, the first thought in their mind is, let me get a tutor. But that already does what school already does. And in fact, I'd argue that even in the modern sense, you really don't need school or a tutor. It's honestly getting to a point where GPT is better at explaining than most teachers and most tutors. Let me put you on some sauce. So I'm in university. I've been in university for 3 years now. This is my 3rd year. And every semester goes the same way. For the first couple of weeks, I attend lectures just to see what the prof is like, just to see what the class is like. And then after 2 weeks, I don't attend a single lecture. And that's not because I'm lazy. It's not because I'm not academically motivated. It's because I can recognize that an hour spent in lecture kind of does the same thing as 20 minutes on GPT explaining the same contents, at least in my case. And you could train yourself to be that same way. And so what happens is that I go to the lecture and I hear my prof talking at 1x speed, because I'm now used to watching YouTube videos at 1.5, 2x speed, but you can't speed up real life, right? And so I hear my prof explaining stuff at 1x speed, and I'm just not engaged. And I could tell myself, in fact, I tell myself, if I just go home and use the resources that they give it to GPT, or just do my own research, I can learn the same content in literally a quarter of the time. And so I have more time to do other stuff, like get better grades or focus on the channel or go exercise, that type of thing. And so if you feel like you're kind of burning up a lot of time, if you feel like you don't really have the time, one of those things that you might start looking into is, how do I make my studying more efficient by not relying on school and tutoring, but applying on tools like GPT that can actually explain stuff to you? And so I would actually argue that in most cases, GPT is way better than teachers and tutors. And we're still only talking about less than 25% of the actual process of getting the top grades. If you've absolutely identified the fact that you're not getting the top grades down to not understanding the content, then sure, we could talk about how you could use GPT and all that stuff. But if you still think that, my issue is not actually understanding the content. When I attend class, it makes sense, but when I actually get to the exam, I'm kind of having a hard time actually applying the content or managing my time or recalling it, then there's stuff we could do about that, whether it's study techniques or just managing your time in general, kind of getting more time for you to actually practice exams rather than just wasting all your time on tutoring, that type of thing. I also wanted to do a quick illustration of why tutoring is not only a waste of time, but also a waste of money. And so let's say the average tutor costs $30 an hour. I think that's the average price based on current markets. And I'd say the average student probably has tutoring for 3 different subjects throughout the year. Most students don't struggle with every subject. It's mostly a couple of subjects that they really need tutoring for. And so I'd say the average is 3 subjects. And the average student also probably does 2 sessions. Let's say each session is an hour. And so that's 30 times by 2 times by 3, which is $180 a week just on tutoring. $180 a week just to tackle not even 25% of getting the top grades. $180 a week. I think that's around $700 a month. And so as you can see, tutoring is not really the best use of your time or money. Like we said before, if you just learn how to use GPT, learn how to get GPT to explain concepts to you, and I'll make a video about exactly how you could use GPT to be better than any tutor and any teacher out there, then not only can you save $180 a week, nearly $700 a month, but you can actually save a lot of time as well. And time is really important for you. The previous video that I made, I was talking about why efficient studying is becoming more important than ever. Because at this job market, it's not really grades that get you, it's not really grades that kind of make you stand apart. You have to have the time to build up experiences, build up skills, build up projects. And if you're if you're studying for the whole week, then you're not gonna have the time to do that. And so to really set yourself up for the future, whether it's applying to university or getting a job or that type of thing, you need to start looking into efficient studying. You need to start understanding that spending 6 hours a week on just tutoring is not the best use of your time. 6 hours a week, you could learn a whole skill in a couple of months with 6 hours a week that could get you employed. And yet you're kind of wasting it on not even 25% of the content. And here's also kind of a really sad reality, which is, this is nothing against tutors, by the way, but it's just the way the business model is, which is tutors benefit from retaining you. Me as a tutor, if I have a student, if I do a really, really good job and the student only needs a couple of sessions, although I've done a really good job, I've now lost the student because they're no longer struggling, and so they're no longer going to pay me. But if I structure my program in a way that requires the student to stay until the exam date, I make as much money as possible. And the student feels like they're relying on me. And so the whole business model is kind of skewed where, yeah, you're going to help me, but you also benefit from having me as long as possible. Let me just repeat that. The whole business model relies on the student staying as long as possible with the tutor. And so how does the tutor benefit from getting those results for the students? In reality, what happened is that the student was paying for a couple of months when all they needed to do was just understand the content, and that could have been done through GPT or just actually paying attention to school or other resources out there. And so to kind of wrap this up, what is the only case when tutoring is actually needed? What is the only case where spending money on a tutor might actually be beneficial? The only case I could think of, and the only case I've come across, is if there's a specific topic in a subject that you cannot understand after you've already exhausted your teachers at school, after you've already exhausted all the AIs and all the websites and the resources out there. If there's a specific topic in a subject that you can't understand, then it might be worth it to invest into a tutor for just 1 or 2 sessions just to understand that topic. But let me reiterate, if you're struggling with a subject as a whole, if you're struggling with the whole subject, in reality, your issue is probably not understanding the content. Because if you can't even understand like a topic within a subject, then let's be honest, like you're probably just not paying attention to school, or you're probably just not motivated enough. A tutor is they're just gonna kind of mop the floor when the tap is still on. You're not actually getting to the root of the problem. And so what I'm trying to get at is, if there's only a specific topic, for me, for example, there was a topic last year that I took in my university that was pretty difficult. It was discrete maths, and I really couldn't wrap my head around it. I understood the other topics in the subject, but this specific topic was quite challenging. Now, I overcame it by just spending a lot of money on GPT, not a lot of time on GPT, and kind of going through the motions of actually doing practice and understanding the topic. But if I was back in school, or if I didn't kind of want to spend the time actually going through GPT and all that stuff, then I would have potentially looked into getting someone to explain it to me. But if I feel like I'm struggling with the whole topic as a whole, then the issue is not the understanding. The issue is something else. The issue is, are you motivated enough? The issue is, are you actually paying attention? The issue is, are you utilizing your resources enough? And this is all just to understand the content. The issue might be recalling the content. Maybe you actually understand it, but when it comes to the midterm or the exam or the unit test, you're just not recalling it properly. And in that case, you're gonna have to explore things like, actually using flashcards, active recall, spaced repetition, that type of stuff. The issue might be applying the content. Are you applying the content properly? If not, then you might just need to spend more time doing practice questions as opposed to getting a tutor. And by the way, the tutor will spend a portion of their time explaining the content in a way that could already be explained through a video, or the teacher already explained it, or GPT explained it. And then they'll spend the rest of the time just telling you to do practice questions. And so what's the point? Why'd you just pay them money, and why'd you just give them time when I'm telling you now, right now for free, if you want to know how to apply the content, just do practice questions as much as possible. And then the fourth part, time management. A tutor's not going to help you with time management, right? Time management is a skill that you build up by putting yourself in exam conditions as often as possible. And so in a way, these two kind of come in hand, where you do practice questions under exam conditions, and that's how you tackle almost 50% of getting the top grades, rather than spending $180 a week, $700 a month on tutoring and wasting a bunch of time as well. Now, just to quickly summarize, first of all, you need to figure out what the actual issue is. If the issue is recalling the content, then we don't need a tutor. If the issue is applying the content, we don't need a tutor. If the issue is time management, again, we don't need a tutor. If, okay, you kind of boil it down, yes, I know exactly how to study, I know exactly how to do practice questions, I know how to manage my time, I just really don't understand this content, then we go to other resources. School, am I actually utilizing my teachers properly? Am I asking them the right questions? GPT, other AIs as well, Claude, Gemini, these are really good resources, and they can explain stuff in a very, very good way. You don't have to pay them unless you want to pay $20 to GPT a month, which is still much cheaper than tutoring. They're not an actual human being, so they're not going to get frustrated by your questions. You can literally ask them unlimited questions and they'll still answer them. And at the same time, I'll be honest, they explain stuff and they understand you much better than the teachers. But if in the case that you still don't understand it, then you need to find someone who specializes in the exact subject/topic that you don't understand and hire them for 1 session or 2 sessions. That's all you need. If you're paying a tutor, a monthly retainer, then in reality, there's a bigger problem that you're not addressing. And you need to address that problem, or else you're going to be paying tutors for the rest of your academic career, and at the same time, you're not going to have the time to invest in projects and skills and experiences. Thanks for watching.